Will the new anti-populism law ensure corruption-free good governance or merely set the stage for a future judicial coup? This week's big issue in the Bangkok Post. The new anti-populism law provides a bone of contention that elites can gnaw by charging a future non-military government with constitutional violation. The words of Alan Dawson in The Big Issue in the Sunday Bangkok Post print edition, the e-newspaper, or at bangkokpost.com. Alan, this bill is long. It has 87 sections. What are its essential points?
Well, the aim of the law is to prevent populism, and populism has been part of the government program from Thaksin at the turn of the century until Ms. Yingluck, the last elected prime minister. I'm not sure that this bill will fit the definition of stopping populism. It seems to me anybody could accuse the government of spending too much money at any time, and that's really the problem with this bill, which has no enforcement on it and no punishment if people do use populism.
It seems like the regime is saying, look at the past. When Thai politicians get in power, they pour billions of baht into projects to reward their supporters and get them re-elected. And a lot of it just disappears into someone's pockets. And they point to the rice pledging scheme of the Yingluck Shinawatra government as a prime example. Isn't this law a legitimate way of stopping that happening in the future?
Well, it's often said that the military is always fighting the last war, and indeed this military regime is fighting the last war against populism when Yingluck Shinawatra, the prime minister, poured many hundreds of billions of baht into a rice support scheme for farmers. But, you know, it's the government's job to spend money. That's what they do. They don't make money. They collect money and they spend money. This government has been accused of spending too much on military procurements, for example, and they have spent money with the farmers as well. Defining populism is very difficult, and that's going to be the problem enforcing this law.
You write that General Prayut has a truck loaded with 700 billion baht, and he's handing it out to the provinces in front of the TV cameras. Isn't this exactly the kind of populism the bill's trying to prevent? Or is it an economically justified way to stimulate investment and redistribute wealth to poorer people?
Well, again, it's government's job to spend money and invest it for the public interest. And the line between populism and proper investment in the country can be very blurry. This government now has this program, as you say, of 700 billion baht. It calls it an investment, but already critics of this government are saying that this is a populist program. It's all going to be spent up country and it's going to get votes for the government. What could it be but populist? That's the critics' side of it, but there's no doubt that it's also an investment.
You mentioned that under a new proposal, taxi rides will start at 40 baht instead of the current 35. What role do taxi drivers in particular play in this political drama?
It always seems in journalism that you have to include taxi drivers, but actually in the current politics of Thailand, taxi drivers have a certain role. Traditionally, they come from the northeast, and the northeast of Thailand is where Thaksin first got his power, his political power, by presenting populist programs to the people in the northeast. Taxi drivers always supported Thaksin. I'm not totally convinced, speaking with taxi drivers these days, as journalists always do, that taxi drivers so radically support Thaksin and the red shirts now, but when it comes to an election, to take the taxi drivers as a group and try to convince them to vote for you is very good politics.
And finally, Alan, you ask what will happen if General Prayut stays on as Prime Minister after the election. So, if he gets enough elected representatives and appointed senators to install him as a so-called outsider Prime Minister, would this new military-dominated government play by the same rules? But isn't the real issue whether the judiciary would be prepared to act against a military-flavored government?
Yeah, this is always the problem of people who write rules that favor their side. When the other side gets to have power, those rules can also be used against them. I'm not sure the military really wants, if it stays in power after the election, if it really wants the opposition to bring up this State Financial and Fiscal Discipline Act of 2018, because as I say, almost any big government program can be accused of being populist, and the debates in Parliament could just slow the whole government down if that is raised.
The debate will continue. Alan Dawson, Big Issue columnist, thanks for joining us. You can read The Big Issue every Sunday in the Sunday Bangkok Post print edition, the e-newspaper, or at bangkokpost.com. What do you think about the new anti-populism law? Leave your comments below or on the bangkokpost.com website. And join us next Sunday for another Big Issue in the Bangkok Post. I'm Dave Kendall. Have a great week.